The Morgan Report with David Morgan.
Welcome. It is David Morgan with you with the weekly perspective for the week ending 8 November 2019. Well, the company that I have been pounding for those that are willing to take on risk in a microcap has some very interesting news, and I'll get to that at the end of this presentation. But if you haven't gone to the website and watched this video on the innovation in electronic waste, I highly recommend that you do. And you can make a decision from there whether you want to get involved or not. But let me start with the stock market, as I almost always do. I'll tell you that copper and gold have been trending in opposite directions for approximately a year. And this goes back to my basic thesis that we are in a situation where the global economy is contracting, which I tell you about almost every week I do perspective. And copper, being Dr. Copper, gives a good indication of the overall economic health of a nation state, or basically the global system. And oil, as Dr. Jim Willie says, is probably a slightly better indicator, or maybe somewhat better indicator. But nonetheless, copper certainly still provides an insight into how much real productive capacity is taking place, whether we have a growing or expanding economy or a contracting one. The reason gold is continuing to move up in real terms is because there's going to be a flood eventually, but there is a slight walk, you might say, and as a metaphor, into gold because it is the kind of asset of last resort. And I just finished my speech in New Orleans about what if silver was treated the same as gold. And I don't have time to go into that. I'll probably make a video for our members, and maybe I'll put it to the public. I'm not sure yet. But when the run to gold happens in a significant manner, the spillover into silver will be extremely significant, even if it's only a partial amount of the run to gold. And the reason being is that the silver market is so small relative to the gold market. So perhaps the copper-gold ratio has hit a level that it's going to stall out for a while. It's hard to say. There may be some more confidence in the economy. Certainly that's what you hear from the mainstream press. You know, Trump is this and that and the other thing. As I prove every week, that's really not true. But there are pockets that are actually doing better. And it's more perception than reality at this point in the game. Most of the mainstream press is mostly propaganda, whether you understand that or not. That's the truth. So first article up, I think, is probably the most exceptional ones I put on this perspective in quite some time, from economic organic collapse of money supply supplanted by synthetic growth equals centrally directed melt-up. And this is definitely worth the full read, and it's probably only about a 3 or 4 minute read. I'm probably going to read quite a bit of it here. But basically the world is, I like the way he starts. The demographic situation the world faces is unprecedented and unparalleled in modern history. All of the deaths of the past few centuries' warfare were blips on a radar compared to what is taking place now. Given the infinite growth economic model, the situation is beyond repair, and no repair will be attempted. The only goal is the extension of the current model with its clear winners and losers. So the article goes on to say that roughly the world is divided into the haves and the have-nots. The haves have a $4,000 per year annual income or greater, and the have-nots are below that. And what's going to take place is that the demographics, the amount of people going over 65, is going to continue to grow in the more prosperous nation states. So the haves are going to have less and less young people paying off or going into debt, really. And the older population is debt adverse. They usually pay off their mortgage, they pay off all debt. They're very reluctant to take on new debt. And the only way money is created is through debt. And I think anyone listening to this, unless they're brand new, understands that fully. So what will happen is you're going to have a lot of deflationary forces, actually, because when loans are paid off, it destroys the money supply. In other words, if every loan was paid off in full tomorrow as a thought experiment, of course it can't be and it won't be, but as a thought experiment, you'd have a zero money supply because everything is debt. If all the debt was paid off, you go to zero. Something to keep in mind. So These two graphs explain it a little better, perhaps, than I just did. But basically, you're going to have a contraction based on the demographics. And I think this one that he put in bold is pretty good. This sums it up fairly well. Simply put, in our fractional reserve banking system, the bulk of money in the economy is lent into existence by a rising quantity of loans. But the data is clear that those who undertake new loans, create new money, will be in indefinite decline, while roughly equally and oppositely, those that pay down or pay off existing loans, destroying money, will take their place. So there's two options to continue growing the debt. Either encourage continually fewer working age persons among consumer nations, in other words, the haves, to take out even more debt with near zero interest rate loans or maybe negative interest rate loans. I mean, that just boggles my mind. So you borrow money and you're basically paid to do it. Something's very, very wrong with the system when we hit that point, and we have. It is progressive and degenerative fundamental weakness, slowing population growth and outright population declines among consumers. That is the premise for ever-greater market interference that drives the observed economic and financial market strength. In other words, smoke and mirrors, propaganda, strongest economy, best employment, all this stuff is just basically nonsense if you get to the real truth of the matter, because the numbers, the way they're calculated, is far from truthful. But they are produced by governments, and they are, of course, broadcast far and wide. And based on the metrics that they use, they are accurate, but they, again, are far from being truthful. So this further backs up what I just finished saying. This is from Zero Hedge, of course, which I often put on these weekly perspectives. European Commission warns of dire future unless Germany issues more debt. In other words, you have to continue to expand. You have to continue to make bigger and bigger loans. And if you don't, the economy contracts. And once that happens, that's what the Fed fears the most. That's what all central bankers fear the most, is not so much a contracting economy, which I've pretty much proven over and over we have, but a contracting money supply. The velocity of money is very low, by the way. A lot of people think, and being an Austrian, any increase in the money supply is inflationary. Well, yes, it is, but the real heart of the matter is what's the velocity. If that money is just loaned to the banks, and the banks, as a metaphor or as an analogy, keep it in the vault and it goes nowhere, or they loan it back to the Fed for interest, then it's almost as if the money doesn't really exist. And it's the velocity of money. What's the turnover? And that's what's really important. So the velocity of money has been very stagnant for a long time. There's very little turnover in the economy, and it makes sense because the middle class in America and many other places is being wiped out. People are moving into the have-not category. Now, I'm not talking really about the $4,000 or less per year. I'm speaking more on a nation state what poverty level is, let's say in the U.S. or North America. But nonetheless, there is a contraction going on, and you can't rule out a deflationary influence. So here's this, the commission saying, hey, Germany, you better borrow some more money. We don't want things to stop. And back-to-back Zero Hedges. I had to get this one in because the recession in the auto industry is tanking the global economy. Now, I made inferences of this quite some time ago, and I've done it throughout my appearance on the web. There was an old expression that probably a lot of you may or may not know. If you're my age, you know it, and it's called, as goes General Motors, so goes America. Basically, the auto industry was kind of the heart and soul of the country. And it was metaphorical, but it was a good analog to the fact that the auto industry employed a lot of people. It was a huge consumer item. It's probably the second largest expenditure of any American or North American outside of a house, obviously. So it really was kind of an overall indicator. And, auto manufacturers, they do build automobiles, and probably some people are going to miss the point I'm about to make, because auto manufacturers do produce automobiles. But if you look at the books and you look at them objectively, what you'll find is that they're all finance companies. They make automobiles, But the reason they make money is because they loan money to buy the automobiles that they manufacture. And that's what is really going on. So if you have auto manufacturer making a lot of automobiles and they're pushed out into the dealerships that are sitting there doing nothing because very few people are buying new cars, and that's something I've emphasized over and over and over. And that means there's fewer loans going on. And of course, the auto industry tried what the mortgage industry tried. If you can fog a mirror, we'll give you an auto loan, drive off with this new car. We trust you to pay it back. And of course, people can't. It's repossessed, and on it goes. So obviously, there's something very, very wrong with the system. And I've been an advocate that this thing can't last forever. And certainly, I've been a little early in my call. But you really want to be prepared earlier than later. I mean, once things start to unravel, they usually start to accelerate. And if that's the case, you certainly would want to have your ducks lined up. You'd want to be prepared prior to that happening. If you're 6 months too early, or 6 years, if that's the case, it's probably better than that day after where things really seize up. And will they seize up? In some places they will. I don't want to paint an inaccurate picture and certainly don't want to force feed the doom. The actual objective reality is stark enough. So I don't want to exaggerate it, but nonetheless, I don't want to also make it, candy coat it where it's really not accurate either. So this is something to pay attention to. Certainly, the auto industry is in deep trouble. So speaking, someone with some experience here, having 2 millennial daughters, what's the alternative? And many of the younger people are not making, adequate incomes to buy overpriced houses in most of the major cities in North America. Some are reluctant to buy automobiles. Some actually are reluctant to go obtain a driver's license. So what's the replacement? Well, Uber is the best known. Of course, there's Lyft as well. But these are alternatives to, let's say, a transportation where you actually have to own something or lease something. However, here's the bottom line from Wolf Street, Wolf Richter. Uber loses another $1.2 billion. Stock dives again. So here we are in a situation where a millennial might elect to not buy a car or postpone having it, and they'll basically take maybe public transportation, walk, or take an Uber. They're probably in the city, as I just mentioned, because they can, a lot of easy access to what they want to do, grocery shop and theaters and movies and coffee shops and everything else. But what kind of replacement is it in a profit-oriented society where you really must make a profit or you're out of business? And I say that tongue-in-cheek, actually, because there's a lot of businesses out there that the corporate banking structure absolutely keeps alive because they have to. The old expression, too big to fail. And that really is more than just the banks. It has to do with industry as well. So I want to talk a little bit more about the e-waste situation. The company just started their plant, and it's doing quite well. And of course, the company's objective is to become one of the leading producers of precious metals using its environmentally friendly metallurgical process. It's developed unique, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly alternative to cyanide for the hydromechanical extraction of precious metals for the mining sector. And it's a process that, as I said, the first plant is full size. There's been a pilot plant for a long time, but full, up and running, industrial size, and small relative to what it could be. Plant is going quite well. There was an interview given, and the CEO of the company just spoke at the United Nations, and it was very well received. And during this latest interview that I posted to our members, he spoke that many of the participants at the sustainability conference at the UN were very favorable to the outlook for this technology. So those that followed us into this, and it's been 4 years, I think we've been following at least 2 or perhaps more. I watched this company for about 2 years before I ever even put it on the list as a speculation, because it was my typical manner. It was show me, don't tell me, although I've certainly not gotten them all right. This one is one that I'm particularly favorable to, and of course I am biased because I own it. And I'm going to go a little bit longer this weekend. Some of the silver news headlines out there. Scientists produce the world's strongest silver alloy, and the metal's high electrical conductivity remains intact. Rising silver investment demand in a detailed report. Science challenge student invents spray-on nano silver bandage. Silicone food containers with nano silver go from oven to table to freezer. Special silver catalyst increases carbon monoxide yield from carbon dioxide, could produce more synthetic fuels and other chemicals. Medical researchers test silver gallium bandage to heal chronic skin ulcers. So those are just a few headlines on the latest silver news report. And of course, silver is very interesting in so many ways. So I just want to leave off with what I usually do, and that is there's nothing more powerful than the truth. We certainly are seeing that across the board, especially with this recent thing with ABC News. Whether you're favorable to Greg Hunter or not, he just was interviewed by Rob Kirby. I just listened to it a few moments ago. And having been a reporter for ABC News, his insights into that company were quite interesting, especially since it's really ABC Disney, that as most of us know. So I still believe that we have an opportunity here, not just for this e-waste company, but for restructuring yourself if you are not invested in the area where you need to be, which is real money. And of course, there are other resource sectors as well that will prevent you from losing what you've worked so hard to earn, because there are going to be some massive changes going forward. First of all, as I've said many times, it looks like the food supply is going to be struggling over the next year or two, if not longer. And we're going to see a run to things that last, things that are trusted, things that people really have confidence in, rather than the paradigm, this paper paradigm that we've been living in for so long. So there is an opportunity. Certainly, I would suggest to get on our free list at themorganreport.com. And once you are there, we will continue to give you useful information like this weekly podcast and other things during the week that should help you to navigate yourself through some very interesting times ahead. Lots of challenges, but that also means lots of opportunity. So again, nothing more powerful than the truth, and the truth usually comes out eventually. Remember, as Martin Luther King once said, the arc of the universe is long indeed, but it bends toward justice. I'll leave you with that. I'll be back next week. Hello, I'm David Morgan, publisher of The Morgan Report, and as some of you may already know, The Morgan Report is about money, metals, and mining. In fact, we cover all resources, from rare earth elements to precious metals. I've been publishing on the internet for about 20 years. My primary passion is to help people build and preserve their wealth. I love to make people millionaires. I've helped thousands of people via our research in The Morgan Report, which has thousands of paid members and 10 times that amount on our free weekly updates. Here's what you'll receive from our free newsletter: to-the-point webinars, weekly analysis of the financial markets, interviews and our conference schedule, special reports such as riches and resources, and various metals price forecasts. Our paid service client base is primarily small to medium-sized business owners, professionals in the industry, or the seasoned investor who understands markets and the value of precious metals. My area of expertise includes equity analysis throughout the resource sector, energy metals, base metals. We cover startups to billion-dollar corporations. We focus on a special sector that makes money regardless of price oscillations, and the importance of precious metals due to the ongoing currency devaluations. Our team of 3 analysts and support staff can help you build and protect your wealth. It's important for you to know what other people have said. We're passionate about what we do. High integrity and trust. Tell the truth and own it. If we're wrong, we admit it. Take a long-term outlook with major assets, and bet a little to win a lot with speculative situations. If you choose to become a client, you will gain financial insights very few, even professionals, recognize. You'll understand the importance of honesty in our financial system. you'll understand how the money system influences almost everything in your life. You'll be prepared for the ongoing currency crisis. And finally, I've chosen to make my life's mission greater than the individual, which means my mission statement is to teach and empower people to understand the benefits of an honest monetary and financial system. It's been a great journey so far, and the best gains in this sector lie ahead over the next 3 to 5 years. I'm fortunate to have earned the status of being a leading authority in my field in helping others protect their wealth. You can email me at support@themorganreport.com or call my office at 480-325-0230.